climate change in real time. And that is not easy. It is a challenge unlike anything Metropolitan has ever faced. The past 3 years are projected to be the driest 3-year period in our state's history. And over these 3 years, we've had the lowest deliveries from the state water project in history. The past 3 months were the driest, January, February, and March, period, in our state's history. What does all this mean for us? It means we don't have enough water in some parts of Southern California to meet normal demands. We need your help. 1/3 of our region, 6 million Southern Californians in parts of Los Angeles, Ventura, and San Bernardino counties face the most immediate challenges because of their reliance on limited supplies in Northern California. These communities must immediately and dramatically, and I mean dramatically, cut back their water use. Our board took a decisive action yesterday, requiring mandatory conservation across the areas. These particular areas are the most stressed, but we need residents and businesses across all of California, Southern California, to ramp up their water savings. Governor Newsom has called for conservation to the tune of 20 to 30% across the state. We must all heed that call. I am confident that we can meet this challenge and manage this emergency. I am confident Southern Californians will respond to what is being asked of them. Our state and our communities have been challenged in the past, and we have risen to that challenge. I know we will again, and we all need to do this together. And so now I would like to introduce our General Manager for Metropolitan Water District, Adele Haskell, who will describe the actions that the Metropolitan Board took yesterday. So thank you very much again for being here.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Adele Hashpali, the General Manager of Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Thank you for being here. The Chairwoman is right. This is a crisis. This is unprecedented. We have never done anything like this before. And because we haven't seen this situation happen like this before. We don't have enough water to meet normal demands for the 6 million people living in the state water project dependent areas. I'm going to start by telling you a bit about how we got here. Southern California has over the past century made critical investments in diverse water supplies. The diversity has generally served us well. When one supply is facing dry conditions, we can turn to another. But the extreme conditions, the unprecedented conditions that we're facing today have hit our states over the past 3 years, and over the past 3 months have dramatically reduced our state water project that comes from the northern Sierras to us have been cut by 2/3. What we're looking for right now, this is really, I want to just really stress how critical this is. The amount of water we have available to us now is not going to be enough to carry us through the entire year unless we do something different, unless we take actions. We have tried everything to move water from the Colorado River on the east side of our region, to move it across, to build emergency systems to move water around, to reduce our dependence on the state water project. But with everything that we have done, we still are falling short behind the amount of supply we have to meet the demand in these critical areas. What we need to do right now, and the board yesterday realized that we need to take action. In November, we took action asking everyone to conserve, to prepare for what we're looking at today. What we saw over the last 3 months have changed the conditions drastically, and the state have reduced our allocation by 2/3. So without sufficient supply, we can't move forward. So the board yesterday declared a water shortage emergency and approved an emergency water conservation program. Under that emergency conservation program, each of our member agencies that receive water from the state water project is required to implement restrictions that limit outdoor watering to 1 day a week or the equivalent. In watering lawn, it takes 30 to 70% of your water consumption. So we're asking people to reduce that water almost by half, if not more, because we need to do something different. And water that is used for the lawn, although a lot of us like green lawn, now we're facing the challenge between green lawn and our health and safety and water for our livelihood. We need to make that priority, and our board made that priority clear. The affected areas in these water agencies are Cayugas Municipal Water District, Inland Empire Utilities Agency, Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Three Valleys Municipal Water District, and Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. That is part of about 30 communities and cities across our region, and we have, I think, the information regarding which cities are impacted. Restrictions imposed by these agencies must limit the amount allowed for watering time on that 1 day. They must be enforced through penalties, and they must be implemented by June 1st. If our member agencies that rely on the state water project supplies do not execute 1 day a week watering restrictions or the equivalent, they face financial penalties from Metropolitan. And if we don't see the cutbacks or conditions do not get better, Metropolitan Board has given me the authority to ban all watering as soon as September 1st. So if we don't do the actions that we need today to stretch our water, the board has authorized me as of September, if we don't see change in the conditions and the water usage, we will ban all outdoor watering in these areas. We know what this means to communities. We know what we are requiring here, but we're facing a challenge. We will not have the supply to meet the normal demands that we have. And now we need to prioritize between watering our lawns or having water for our children and grandchildren and livelihood and health. As I've told you, 30 to 70% of the water goes to our outside uses, our lawns. But with this historic drought getting worse, we cannot afford green lawns. We know many people are likely watering their lawns and their gardens more frequently than this, and cutting back will hurt their yards. With 1 day per week watering, our lawns will get brown or yellow, but they will not die. And those who have climate-friendly landscaping will not see any difference. But today we must save more of our water for indoor use. And this is the first step. If we reduce our water use by 35% now, we will avoid 0 days of watering later in the summer. We are heading into the summer, so we need to start now because our water use increases in the summer. And none of us want to go to a place where we don't have water for our indoor use. So let's do it now. Let's work together on it. This is not what we want to get to, is banning all outdoor usage, but if we don't see the change, we will do that. At the height of our drought in 2015, Southern California was asked to cut our water by 25%. Today, we're asking our Southern California residents, or Southern Californians, we're asking them to reduce the water usage by 35%. This is the new reality. This is the changing climate. And we are making efforts and investments to avoid it in the future, to really make sure that we create a resilient future for our region through water recycling, reusing water, storage, underground storage. Every effort will be made to ensure that we work together to build the future for us to be resilient and independent of the changing climate. But we can't do it alone. We need the support from our partners at the state and the federal level to ensure investments are being made here quickly and swiftly. But right now, we must preserve the available water we have for the greater public benefit. This drought has left us without enough water. That is the tough reality we all face. So we have an option. Can we work together to stretch the water we have to last us for the entire year, or have to take drastic actions in September? Let's just do it together. And I have the utmost trust in the people of this region. They've done it well, they've responded well, and we have the utmost belief that we can do it together. Now let me introduce my CEO, Metropolitan COO, Devin Apadahe, that will give you the details about the implementation and the specifics regarding how we're going to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele, and good morning, everyone. Before I get into more of the details, I do want to reiterate, this is a crisis unlike anything that we've seen before. We really only have a little more than half of the water that we need to be able to make it through the summertime and into the end of the year under normal demands. And that's why normal will not work. We need to urgently save water that we have for the greatest public benefit. And that means limiting outdoor water use to 1 day a week or the equivalent. As Adele said, we've never been in a situation like this before. After the record January, February, and March, the State Department of Water Resources reduced the State Water Project allocation, the amount of the contract right that we would normally get, to just 5%. And last year was actually the same, also 5% allocation. If we think about this, 10 years ago, when the state did their projections of what contractors could rely on from the State Water Project, they never contemplated a year that would produce a 5% allocation. Now we've had 2 in a row, which is unprecedented. This latest low allocation is coming in the 3rd year of a drought. And it doesn't provide enough water to meet the minimum human safety and health needs that we would need in the State Water Project dependent area. So the state has agreed to invoke a never before used contract provision in our contract that allows them to provide emergency water this year for those base health and human safety needs, things like indoor domestic use, fire protection, sanitation. To give you a sense, that roughly amounts to about 55 gallons per person per day. The average person in Southern California uses about 125 gallons a day. Communities that have a lot of outdoor water use can be significantly higher than that. So we do have some additional supplies that we can bring to these State Water Project dependent areas to help out. These are stored supplies that we were able to bank in previous years. We're also acquiring additional transfer water from other parties, but it isn't much. We're finalizing what those numbers look like, but it may be around another 25 gallons per person per day. So that gets you, if you add them together, 55 and 25, to about 80 gallons per person per day, which is significantly lower than what I just shared with you as the average use that we typically see. I just want to share these numbers to give you a bit of perspective, and it's important given the board's action that they just took yesterday. So you've noticed that we keep saying restrictions limiting outdoor water use to 1 day per week or the equivalent. What's meant by or the equivalent? These figures are really important. Agencies that ultimately choose to implement the 1 day a week watering limitations, that's a pretty clear path to compliance. But agencies can also choose another approach, where we will give them a volumetric amount that they can use each month, and it's related to those per capita numbers of about 80 gallons per day. If they go over those volumetric limits, they would face penalties, as Adele mentioned, from us as an agency. Our member agencies will ultimately determine how to implement these restrictions. For those that are implementing the 1 day a week limiting or watering rules, they're going to decide what day of the week, whether it alternates between folks that have an odd or an even house number. They know the best local approach given their local circumstances. But we do expect all of these affected agencies to enforce these mandatory restrictions on consumers, and we're going to do the same with our member agencies. If an agency chooses not to follow either one of these paths, the 1 day a week restrictions or the volumetric limits, they'll face up to $2,000 per acre foot in penalties for water that we have to provide. I want to share that there are a few important exceptions. The primary exception is related to watering for trees, the ability to hand water trees. The fact is we don't want to see our beautiful and ecologically important tree canopies suffer because of these restrictions. People should be able to continue to hand water their trees. But we need to see a dramatic reduction in water use, specifically outdoor water use. And as Adele mentioned, if we don't see that drop, then restrictions will be getting more severe later in the year. If people aren't complying, if we don't see the water savings that we need in the coming months, we may have to implement an all outdoor water use ban. That could happen as early as September 1st. And if that still isn't enough, we might have to implement across the board volumetric water limits on all of the agencies in this part of the service area. We're going to be monitoring the daily water use and how much is being used, and we'll also be looking at how closely residents and businesses are responding to these emergency restrictions. Bottom line is we need compliance. Adele said, we realize what we're asking. We know it's a lot, and we're doing everything that we can to limit this hardship. We've been working hard in partnership with these agencies to give these agencies more State Water Project supplies, to get access to our Colorado River supplies. We've re-engineered our system to push Colorado River water into areas that don't normally receive it. In some cases, flowing water in the reverse direction that's typically used to flowing. We're doing this in the immediate term to address this current situation, and in the long term to, frankly, prevent this crisis from happening again. We're also looking everywhere that we can for additional State Water Project supplies if they're available in this year time. Things like water that might be available on the market via transfers. But we've done pretty much everything that we can to alleviate the immediate crisis, and now we need the public's help. We need people and businesses in the State Water Project dependent area to comply with these restrictions immediately. And with that, we're available to take your questions. Thank you.
Can we get a mic right up here to the left front one?
Is this thing on? Okay, there we go. Hi, thank you for all that. A few questions. First, when you talk about closely monitoring the daily use of water, what does that mean exactly? And then with talk of fines, can you just talk a little bit more about the repercussions people could face if they exceed the limit and when those would go into effect?
I'll ask Devin to answer the first question, but let me talk about the second. There'll be penalties of $2,000 per acre foot of additional use beyond what you're allowed to use. That only applies to the member agencies of Metropolitan, the 26 member agencies. They will by turn implement actions against their retailers that they work in. So we will assess the member agency, the penalty if they go beyond the allocation they have of $2,000 per acre foot of penalty that is used above the allocation they have. But let me have Devin talk about the monitoring.
So in our system, we have meters on every delivery that we make to our member agencies. Those meters we're actually able to read in real time. So we have the ability, as I mentioned before, on a daily basis to know how much water we're delivering to each of these agencies that are affected. We'll be reporting on a monthly basis to our board, but also to your question about daily, we'll be sharing that information with these agencies so they know how much water they're using. At a retail level, they're able to look at what consumers are using. So we'll be pairing that information up with the data they have on retail level consumption, residents, businesses, to be able to see how we're faring as we go through the summertime. That summertime is particularly critical to your question because consumers will know when you look at your water use, in the wintertime, it's typically lower. Most of your water use is the indoor use you have. You're not watering your lawns or your drought-tolerant landscape as much because it doesn't need it. In the summertime, you'll see outdoor water use really spike up. That's why this message needs to be heard now and why we're taking the action now to have the most effect we can to reduce that summertime use, which is most critical.
Hi, quick question about the penalties once again. So $2,000 for the agencies, will those be passed down to consumers or how are customers affected by it?
So the plan is we did not want to penalize the customers. That money will be taken and implemented into water conservation measures. So it's going to get back, put into the community, into actions to help conserve water. So that penalty is not money being put aside, it's being taken and put back into actions to conserve water.
Cara Finstrom with Channel 2 here. Can you give us a feel for what would happen if we exceeded the demand that we have right now? We talk about a water emergency, but realistically, what would happen? Explain to us, is water not going to come out of the tap? But kind of paint for us why this is such a dire emergency.
I mean, what we are looking at, projecting over the summer, that we need to reduce our water consumption by 35%. And really what we're saying to everyone is the supply of water that is needed for indoor use is not going to be available fully. And that's going to create a challenge for people. And we want to be ahead of it and work through a process to ensure that that water we have in our allocation and the water that's coming from the state water project and the storage we have that Devin talked about, what's going to end up is you will have to have about 80 gallons per person per day to use. So that's going to be a limit. We're going to get to a place where we have to put that limit on people using water. And that's the next level that we will get to after September, as we talked about as early as September, we may ban all outdoor water usage. What we're trying to do is save the water so we can have it available for people that need it for their indoor use. And conservation should be a way of life for all of us. This is a wake-up call for everyone. Do what you need to do to conserve water. Take your action, because this is a time of crisis. This is a time unprecedented we've seen. And our goal is to prioritize the water usage. And we want to make sure that the water we have in our storage and the water coming to us from the state water project in Northern California will stretch enough to help us last for the entire year.
This is going to be in Spanish, if you might, please. Nuevamente para la versión en español, por favor, queremos saber cuáles son las consecuencias en el caso de no cumplirse con el seguimiento del consumo de agua y el consumidor común, la gente que está en casa, cuál es su participación o hay una consecuencia directamente para ellos o no.
La consecuencia que van a vivir los residentes la van a tener que ver de parte de su agencia local. Las agencias mismas, si no pueden cumplir con la pedida de restringir el usuario de agua de un 35%. Estamos actualmente en una crisis, la estamos viviendo. Los últimos 3 años, como se han enterado, han sido años de sequía. Los últimos 3 meses han sido los 3 meses más secos históricamente en el estado de California desde los tiempos que hemos tomado datos. A resultado del estado de California nos han restringido nomás un 5% nomás de lo que dan anualmente a nuestra pedida, ¿no? La pedida. Entonces, al resultado tenemos que pedirles a todos que simplemente riegan el patio un día por semana a este momento. No son todas las zonas del sur de California, pero sí queremos que todos participen en este esfuerzo en común. Los residentes de los 6 condados del sur de California. Hay unas zonas exclusivas que reciben agua solamente del estado de California. Y esas zonas son las zonas que van a tener que tomar en cuenta esta pedida. Hay que restringir un 30% a un 35%. Un día nomás van a poder regar el patio. Si no lo pueden realizar, no tenemos otras opciones. La única opción que tenemos que posiblemente para el mes de septiembre tenemos que darle una restricción de 0 días. Entonces le damos, sabemos que lo pueden realizar y lo pueden hacer porque lo han hecho en el pasado. Los californianos han respondido a esta pedida en el pasado y sabemos que lo pueden hacer. Y lo van a hacer no solamente por el bien de ustedes, lo van a hacer por el bien de los negocios y lo van a hacer por el bien de todas las personas que se encuentran en el estado, en el Valle Central y al norte de California, que necesitan empleo. Sin agua no hay empleo. Si no hay empleo, pues ya saben que no hay calidad de vida. Entonces, con eso les pedimos que cumplen con este 30 a 35% de conservación de agua.
Por favor, para estar más claros nada más, ¿cuáles son estas ciudades y condados que tienen que ahorrar el agua? Y segundo, ¿qué va a pasar en septiembre? Un poco más claro, ¿qué va a pasar en septiembre si no se logra el objetivo?
Los condados son el condado de Los Ángeles, San Bernardino y porciones y Ventura. Y lo que va a pasar en septiembre es, si no cumplen, tenemos nosotros la obligación de hacer la restricción a 0 días por semana de regar patio. Gracias.
Aquí en el sur de California estamos acostumbrados a abrir la llave y que salga el agua. ¿Qué tan crítica es la situación que eso pudiera interrumpir?
Tenemos abastecimientos de agua para todo el año completo, ¿no? Entonces, esa situación pues, es la que queremos prevenir. Entonces, con este esfuerzo que vamos a hacer todos en común, vamos a prevenir esa situación.
Hi, I'm Haley Smith with the LA Times. Can you talk a little bit about how this will be applied to golf courses, green spaces, other sort of public fields, things like that? And then also, can you clarify what specific conditions we would need to hit in order to trigger this all-out ban in September, and why September?
So let me go to the last part of your question. As we said, we need to cut our water usage by 35%. We are looking into the summer month where we think usually the water use increases over time. That's normal, that's what happens. A lot of it because of watering the lawns. That's what happens and that's normal. We're trying to be ahead of it. So we're saying let's cut. And our goal is to get to a place that we have all of us in this area at the 80 gallons per person per day. And we're trying to preserve everything we can. So if we don't see the movement in the measurements between now, June 1st, all the way leading to August, and when we see that we're not seeing the response that we are expecting and we're hoping and we know will happen hopefully, if we don't see that, we're gonna turn, and I'm authorized by my board to ban all outdoor usage. And that's going to be responsibility of the retail agencies to enforce on their systems. And if we don't see the change beyond that, and the conditions worsen, we will get to the specific allocation that everyone will get their budget of 88 gallons per person per day, and we all have to manage through that. This is something that we're saying to everyone. We are looking ahead and asking us to all work together, asking everyone to be ready to stretch the water we have so we all have enough water. And 1 day of watering a week is a good compromise, but if we don't see the change, we will do the next action. Regarding golf courses, playing grounds, there is flexibility to work with them, but that's up to the agency managing that. There is a flexibility that's done through their codes. There is a lot of things that have to be done. Some of these golf courses or water facility areas or parks are watered with recycled water. So just remember to the public, sometimes you'll see golf courses and parks being watered, but they're using recycled water. So that's not, we are actually encouraging people to use recycled water because that offsets the potable drinking water. So this is all hands on deck effort by all of us, all managers, all operators, but also all Southern Californians. This is real, this is serious, this is unprecedented.
One more follow-up question. As far as you know, it is the most restricted water regulations that Angeles has seen. And I'm speaking right into it. Are these the most restrictive water regulations Angelinos have seen, as far as you know? And two, just to be clear, how will the individual be penalized? If the water agency is penalized $2,000 per acre foot over the allocation, how will that fall to the individual?
So this is, to my information and checking with the staff, we have not seen this before. This is the first time that our board has gone to this level. In the previous drought, I think we tried to get to 25% reduction, 20% reduction, 2015. But we haven't seen anything like this. And that tells you, like, just to give you an example, in December of this year, the snowpack in the northern Sierras were at 165% of normal. Forward to April, it's 38% of normal. We are seeing excessive heat that's evaporating the snow quicker than we can. It's not even lasting, and it's being absorbed by the soil. We had also 3 months of dry weather that we didn't see even rain. We're behind on precipitation, but it's the changing climate that we cannot rely on anymore. That's why water recycling, conservation, storage is the future for us, for our resiliency, for the future of our region. We're committed to it. We're going to work hard for it, and we were asking you to help us as we move forward to preserve every drop, because every drop we conserve is a drop we can save for our future and for our health and safety.
Do you expect compliance if there's not direct penalization against customers?
We believe with your help and the help of the media, our outreach messaging campaign, you'll see an aggressive campaign. But we believe in the ability of the member agency, water agencies, and the retailers to take the necessary action. We have rebates available to our customers. Go to bewaterwise.com and take advantage to put in the meter to measure how much water you're consuming. If you're consuming too much water, it could be a leaky pipe, and we have a rebate program to help you address the leaky pipe. If you have a leaky toilet, we can help you. If you need to replace your lawn with a drought-friendly, We have the money to pay you, to give you the incentive. We're here to partner with you. Let's do it together. Let's transform our space to be resilient to the changing climate and become more sustainable when it comes to water and reduce our water footprint as a whole.
There we go.
If I can follow up to that last question. There are consequences of inaction, and those consequences are that we would have to go to a full outdoor ban of water use, outdoor water use. We want to avoid that. So what the board adopted yesterday requires our agencies to enforce these restrictions. So the question is about penalties at the local level. We expect agencies to enforce these restrictions in order to ensure that we're getting a response. We hope that we do not have to assess any penalties on our agencies. That would mean that everyone is complying and that we're managing within the water that we see is available through the end of the year. That's the best case scenario. But we are asking our agencies to enforce this. This is the most severe reduction that we've requested of our agencies in our agency's history. So the requirements are commensurate with that.
I think from the board's perspective, the key takeaway today is that, we do have a goal of 35% water conservation, and we also have a target of 80 gallons per person, and that's very important, but we do need the help of the public. We can accomplish all of this, and again, that's the purpose of the press conference today, is to get the word out that this is an emergency crisis condition that we're in. The drought is very, very much an emergency, and managing water is very important because of this drought. And so you've heard a lot of information today. The board is taking an unprecedented action, we believe, two-phase approach, with the first phase being watering 1 day a month. And if necessary, we hope it's not necessary to go into the second phase, which would be in September. So we do need your help. That's the message that should be taken away today. The public is the key to this. Water conservation, we have to conserve water. General Manager talked about making water conservation a way of life. We have to subscribe to that. We have to believe in that. And so we hope there are no penalties that are invoked or that's necessary to do. And so please take away the message that we have to conserve water. We're in an emergency drought. We have to manage our water, and we're doing it. We're being prepared so that we don't have to do anything that is necessary in terms of the second phase of mandatory zero, no watering, and so forth, and any penalty. So again, thank you all for being here today. If there's no more questions, we thank you again for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.